I always choose you. These are the words that Brooklyn Beckham posted about his wife this week that reignited the growing bin fire that is Beckham family relations. Are we across? Would you like me to give you a quick...
Not as across as you are.
Would you like me to give you a quick catch-up?
I think a bit of a TLDR.
I know you two are you're quite across the in-law situation, so you might want to jump in there.
There are role models.
There are. I love that. Anyway, a quick catch-up. The Beckhams, one of Britain's two royal families, have always been exceptionally tight. It's been a big part of their brand, right? David and Victoria have been married for 26 years.
And do they have 4 kids?
They have 4 kids, right? Harper is the youngest, and then they have 3 boys, and Brooklyn is the oldest. And let's remember that when Brooklyn was born, back in the early days of Posh and Beck's mania, they were tabloid staples. They sold the engagement, they sold the wedding, they sold the christening. We've all seen Brooklyn in the culture since he was literally born, right?
And he's tried to sort of have a career in entertainment. Like he's tried to do photography, he's tried to do a cooking show.
Jessie, I'll have you know that he's a hot sauce entrepreneur.
He is.
I don't like your tone.
Well, he's tried a few things and they haven't all stuck.
I would definitely, if it was covered in poo, give it a little rinse and put it back in the fridge because I love it. But anyway, he moved to America 3 years ago when he married actress and billionairess Nicola Peltz, right? Now, the Beckhams have lived in America at times, and Beckham Sr., David, does have a football team in Miami, so he is there a lot, but primarily their base is London. That's where Victoria, and the countryside where David has his bees and Victoria makes frocks. But any time you see the Beckhams in public, they post about it. Any big event,
Mother's Day, Father's Day,
love a big event. And whichever kids are missing, they'll always be like, miss you, Romeo, miss you, Brooklyn.
They're very family people.
They are massively family people. But ever since Brooklyn and Nicola got married, there have been rumblings, haven't there? We all remember the wedding rumblings.
Which is interesting when you hold it up against the other great, this is an alleged estrangement, but the other estrangement, which is there's always a wedding fallout.
Well, it's like we really want to blame the daughter-in-law, don't we? So we really wanted to blame Meghan for Harry and William falling out. We really want to blame Nicola for Brooklyn falling out with his family.
Because they're the interlopers.
Well, yes, and it kind of seems in this case probably true, right? But for a few years, they've been holding it together. Like Nicola's turned up at some events, and I think she made an appearance in the Beckham documentary, and she went to a few fashion shows. But lately, not so much. And everybody got their antennae up about it when, of course, Beckham had his 50th birthday, which was a few weeks ago. I think we talked about it. He had like 14 parties on several continents, and Brooklyn wasn't at any of them.
And he wasn't really acknowledged either, was he? And he didn't do a happy birthday.
Brooklyn and Nicola, none of that. No.
And no post on Brooklyn's grid.
No.
Dad, happy birthday.
Yeah. And he posts as we've described him before, he is a wife guy. He posts constantly about Nicola and how much he loves her. And he also posts about her family. He recently did a big post about her mum, for example. Anyway, this week in tabloid parlance, Brooklyn broke his silence. And what he did was he posted some pictures of his beautiful wife. And in it, he said, I always choose you. And that, of course, has been forensically examined to mean one thing. Between my family and my wife, it's my wife every time.
Wow.
Typical responses to this in the many, 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 many comments are, if that was my son saying that, knowing what the post is about, I would be devastated. Blood is thicker than water. And any loving wife should never make her husband choose between her and her husband's family. If she doesn't get on with them, then she doesn't have to visit. But if he was any sort of man, he should have said, don't make me choose. The thing is, this isn't just a Beckham or Windsor thing. Time magazine recently declared an epidemic of family estrangement, saying that in the US, 1 in 2 adults is estranged from a close relative. That's a lot.
Wow.
And here in Australia, Stephen Lunn recently wrote a big piece in The Australian about the trauma of parental estrangement and said that often this kind of divide is cataclysmic for families. He quoted a senior psychologist who's an expert in contemporary families, who said parents of adult children are often denied access to their grandkids in these situations. Siblings have to make a decision about who to side with. And for the parent, there is really no upside. They are left with shame, guilt, and loss.
Jessie, who do you think Luca would choose? Should we get him in? Let's get him into the studio and ask him.
Oh my God,
I
can
find
you imagine?
the word choose so loaded.
Yeah.
I keep thinking, is there any context in which
he didn't mean what he appears to mean?
Yes. And is there a way that could just be, a show of loyalty to his wife that isn't about ranking people?
It's a throwdown.
But it's a throwdown. And I can't imagine Luca ever saying that to me.
I would expect and hope that he would choose you.
Really?
Of course. I mean, I've said many times that when he was little, I remember coming home from the hospital and holding him and crying, and Jason was like, "Why are you crying?" And I'm like, one day he'll love someone more than he loves me. And he met Jessie, and he does, and now he's got Luna, and he does. But I see it in terms of leaderboards, but I'm like, that brings me joy. What I didn't realise then, even though it was a bit of a wrench when he moved out and married you and all of that, and not that it was you, but that loss, there was definitely loss and grief. But there was also incredible joy, and that was the way it was meant to be,
What
right?
about if he'd have fallen in love and married someone who lived in America and went and lived with their family in one of their big mansions?
Oh, fuck that bitch.
Yeah, can you imagine? And then it's like any potential grandchildren or grandchildren, there's this ocean between you. Like, I think that is to presume that there's any sort of hierarchy in how you love people. And it's not just for Brooklyn. It looks like it's not just his parents, but his siblings. Like, he was really close with all of those siblings. And now, he's in the UK and apparently not seeing any of them, which feels so tragic. But there's this guy named Dr. Joshua Coleman, who is like an expert on this stuff. And he's written books and he's very nuanced, but he has said that this new thing is that sometimes when children aren't thriving in adulthood, they see their parents as the reason why. And in fact, there can be many, many reasons, like unhappiness. If you're unhappy in your life as an adult, there are 1,000 reasons that have nothing to do with how you're parented.
But if you go to therapy, it's usually the first thing they want to talk to you about.
Yes, exactly. And that's what they've said. There is kind of this theory that it's like, is this a seed being planted by some therapist? On the other hand, our definition of what constitutes neglect, abuse, trauma has all changed and been broadened in a way that is quite helpful to some people. Yeah. So if you're someone who, I know a few people who are estranged from their parents and it's their choice, they have made that choice. And I would say, and I can only know so much, that it is the right choice for them, that their parents did things. And this is what I struggle with in the reporting of this and also in the reporting of Harry a little bit, is that from what I can see, estrangement is never the result of one thing. It's never the result of one conflict, one event. It is like the building up of a certain dynamic over decades where someone has to say, enough is enough. I'm going to protect my peace.
That is true. In real life, it's one of the things that makes it hard. Obviously, you never have any idea of what's really going on in other people's families, and certainly not famous people's families. But because they've always been and projected this public image of familial perfection, I think that Brooklyn's hot sauce, for example, is named after David's football number. Yeah. And he has always professed his dad to be his absolute icon. And they, as I say, they've always presented this really tight front. So that we all know that doesn't really mean anything behind the scenes, but I think that's often we look at families from the outside and we go, look at them, they're all so close, they're all so tight, it must be so great. And so if something happens that to dent that image, it's all the more jarring.
It's also so revealing that we think, recently we're talking about women feeling like human grout, was your analogy, Mia, as in it's the job of women to kinship and to mold these relationships. And if you and Luca, for example, were to have some fracture in your relationship, it would be somehow my job to fix it. Yeah. That's what I'm seeing in a lot of this. And even with the captions and stuff is people blaming Nicola for making him choose. And it's well, Brooklyn, also has a responsibility to his own family.
And
it's
that
not
was
her
the narrative
job.
around Meghan and Harry as well, wasn't it? I think often, if you look at those two things as being similar, Harry and Brooklyn, the woman gets blamed, but she's possibly just the catalyst and the getaway car for a man who wants to get away. And I think that we can't even possibly imagine what it's like to be the child of two of the most famous people in the world who are still really on top of their game. It's not like they used to be famous 10, 20 years ago. I mean, they did, but they've managed to stay relevant. And even with this most recent documentary about David Beckham, and now Victoria Beckham's making one as well. But what's interesting about the daughter-in-law coming in, and this is something I've been very conscious of in our relationship, is that until your children start partnering, you're the main character. The mother is often the main character in the family. And Victoria is very much the main character in that family. And Nicola, understandably, probably doesn't want to be a side character in the Beckham family. She wants to be the main character in her life. And that means not being a cameo as part of the extended Beckham family. It means having, starting something of her own. And what I think she's overestimated is the interest in her, apart from the fact that she's married to Victoria and David Beckham's eldest son.
Again, though, that makes it sound like there's no coexisting, because the thing is you can be the main character in your house but still recognise that the matriarch of the family still has power and place. Like it doesn't have to be an either or. One of the things that I think is incredibly sad is that we often hear from women who, when recently I did a call out for mid women about issues they might have, problems they might have for an agony aunt episode, and a lot of them were about this. They were like, I don't think my new daughter-in-law likes me and I don't know what I've done, or my son isn't calling me very much anymore, I'm terrified of losing them. I think that like lots of stages in our life, we tell ourselves stories of how it will go and how lovely it will be to be surrounded by your grandchildren and an extended family and a big table and lots of people. And if it doesn't play out that way, it can be absolutely devastating.
Very true. And I'm just thinking more about what I said earlier about I would want him to choose you and all of that stuff. We're in a very unique situation, and you and I were friends before and co-workers, but friends. We had a really solid relationship before you started dating Luca. So I already knew that I liked you and you hopefully liked me a little bit. And so it was just a bonus when Luca was with you. But I've also had an experience when one of my children's been with someone who I didn't not get on with, but she clearly didn't get me and was like a bit taken aback by me, which is completely understandable. It's interesting in this article I read that we are a generation who, Xers and some boomers who used to be scared, or we grew up scared of our parents and now we're scared of our children because the vulnerability you have, not just if you said to Luca, let's move overseas, but if you were like, I don't like your mother, or I don't want to go to the family thing, or, the vulnerability of your child saying, I don't want to see you anymore, or we're cutting loose is gutting. And even more so when you have children. I remember my mother said when she became a grandmother, she's never felt more vulnerable in her life because her access to her grandchildren was completely out of her control.
I wonder if our concept of family is changing. I've actually had these discussions with Luca and with friends of where the boundaries or the lines of family are drawn. So for the Beckhams, it's like for Victoria and David, and we're projecting a lot here, but they see Nicola and they go, welcome in. Welcome in, right? And it's the same, I think, with in-laws often, that it's like
we've
family
got a lot of
gets
bedrooms.
bigger. Exactly right. And it's like you will be a part of this. But there is some people, I think, see their family as something smaller, as something more nuclear, as something that they are inventing. When a baby comes along, I think this has a lot to do with your relationship with in-laws and your own family. But you go, okay, now we're a family. It's us, and it's almost like you close the door. And I wonder if that's happening a little bit where you're not seeing the extended clan as,
The other thing that's tricky there is that sometimes the person you welcome in doesn't like the dynamic they see with you. So, and I'm not suggesting this is exactly what's happened here, but I've seen it happen plenty of times in my life where they go, oh, I don't like the way your mother talks to you or your brother, or they tease you and they make you feel small, or we leave there and you're in a terrible mood, or, like your dad always.
Or you regress.
Yes.
Or you become someone I don't like very
exactly.
much.
I don't like who you are in that house, or your dad bullies you and it makes you seem like, then I have to pick up the pieces afterwards. Like there's so much complexity in these kind of relationships that I know for lots of people, there's a relief of separating yourself from your family and being able to be you. Like this is me and who I want to be, and I'm starting again and I'm building my family the way I want it to be. And I want to resist the vortex of my old self,
For a long time too, children were seen in a position of servitude, and that was endless. That was until the day their parents died. And I think that there's almost like we see that servitude through William, but now there's this changing idea of mutuality, or like mutual respect and like a relational
obligation.
And something that's maybe a little bit more equal. And the people I know who are very close to their parents, I'm one of them. There is a friendship that develops, and it's certainly not out of obligation that I speak to my mum. Like it's because we both get a lot out of the relationship. So I think that that's shifting, that people are going, I don't owe you a relationship because you gave birth to me if there are things that I find I don't like about myself or about you when I'm stuck in this dynamic.